I want to thank Shlomo. I want to thank Matis for setting this up. My name is Avi Singer. And I, for most of my career, I've worked in something called human resources. I know Chai mentioned what that is, but let me give you a little bit of what does human resources do. Human resources is responsible for hiring employees. So I've managed recruiting teams for a number of years and hire literally hundreds, if not thousands, of employees. They're responsible for training those employees. So if somebody comes to the company, you have to train them on our technology, our software, sales, customer service, and then all the other pieces. So benefits, salaries, the legal part of it, right? How to treat people. So I've done all those things for the last eight or 9 years. I'll give you a little bit of my history also, because I think it's important to understand that. But the biggest part I want to talk about today is just following up on what Chaim was talking about is, how do people get hired? How do people get hired at a job? And I've hired, like I said, I've hired probably thousands of people in my career, and there's a process to it. There's a science to it. So I grew up in Montreal, in Canada, where it's even colder than it is here today. And I came to New York in 1996. And the reason I came to New York was in Canada to work or to go to college, you have to go in English and in French. I had enough trouble in high school in English. I wasn't going to try to do it in English and French. So I came to New York. I went to yeshiva here, and I went to Touro College at night. It was very convenient. It was 2 nights a week, from 6 o'clock until 10 o'clock, and I got a degree. And the reason I got my degree was very similar to what we were saying before about a rabbinic degree. It was because I wanted to go to graduate school. The whole goal for me in getting my degree at Touro was this will help me get into a good graduate school, because I figured that'll help me get a good job. And it did. I had a very good GPA at Touro. I had a 3.9 GPA at Touro. I took the right classes. I did the right things. And I got into Columbia University. And I will tell you right now that for my field in human resources, the only thing that ever got me a job was the fact that it said Columbia University on my resume. Because aside from that, the only thing I had on my resume was I was a camp counselor, I was a head waiter, I tutored. Those were the things on the resume. Otherwise, I can show you my resume from 2004, 2005. That's what it said, right? I didn't have anything. But somebody very smartly said, "Listen, you went to Columbia University. Put that on top of your resume. You went to Columbia. Someone's gonna pick that up." So I went to Columbia. I was there for 15 months. I got a master's degree in organizational psychology, it's called. It's business psychology, which is what I wanted to do, what I wanted to go into. I applied for a number of jobs. The job I really wanted to get was with JetBlue. And I interviewed with JetBlue, and I got this close. The problem with JetBlue is the job I wanted there, I had to be available 24/7. I live right near JFK. I live in Far Rockaway. I lived in Far Rockaway then. I was right near JFK, so they said, "You're perfect." But it was to deal with emergencies. That's really what I wanted to do, was deal with emergencies and train all the pilots. What do you do in emergencies? All that. That's really what I wanted to do. But then they said, "We're sorry. You can't work 24/7. We can't hire you." So I was a little disappointed. But soon after that, I got a call from a company called DoubleClick. From 1996 till about. First of all, 1996 to about 2000, DoubleClick was one of the big .coms in those days. It went from an IPO, it went from $0 to $200, $300 very quickly. When I joined in 2005, 2006, it was not doing as well, but had been bought by a big investment firm. And when they hired me there, they called me up, and I remember asking them. I said, "What got you to call me?" And they said, "Well, we saw you had Columbia on your resume." I said, "Okay, fine, that worked. It was worth the tuition." And I got a job there, and they said, "We just got bought by a private equity firm, and we're going to double the size of the company in the next 2 years. We're going to go from 700 employees to about 1,500 employees in 2-3 years, and we're really going to grow very, very fast." So Baruch Hashem, I interviewed for the job, and I got the job. So let me go back to that first. How do you get a job? How do you get a job at a company?
Columbia University.
It's exactly what it is. There are 2 ways that people get jobs. One, somebody finds you. You can be found, especially in today's day and age, with LinkedIn, with Twitter, with Facebook. You can be found. People can call you. And now at this point in my career, I've been doing this for a long time. I do get phone calls. People just find my profile on LinkedIn. And the second way is you apply for a job. right? And when in either one of those scenarios, though, you have to have something that stands out. Something that matches, something that works, that fits for what they're looking for. If you apply for a job with a resume and it has nothing to do with what the job is, it's not going to get it, throw in the garbage. And if you're not going to apply for the job and you're hoping to be found, again, the same thing. No one's going to see your profile if it's not a very sophisticated profile. I'm going to come back to this later. Let me continue with the history a little bit. I worked at DoubleClick, helped them grow the company from 700 to 1,500 people. In 2008, we were acquired by Google. The company went from being bought for $1 billion to being sold for almost $3.5 billion, 2.5 years later. The strategy worked exactly like they thought it would. I made none of that. So, but I got a job at Google. It was a contract for me. It was a contract, a 6-month contract. They asked me to stay on afterwards, make sure that the transition went very smoothly, and then I went on to work for another company called Undertone, also a technology company in the online advertising space. With Undertone, we went from 80, 90 people to now it's almost a 350-person company. And then recently, last year or so, I recently started my own software company. As Chaim mentioned, human resources software in general is not very innovative, and I'm looking to change that a little bit. Okay, so that's been my career so far. When I started to look for a job, or when I thought about looking for a job in 2003, 2004, around there when I was getting my degree, that piece of advice, that first piece of advice, have Columbia on top of your resume, is the piece of advice that I've used as a philosophy for every job application I've had, for everything I've done in the last 8 years. That's been the philosophy. And that's what I realized. When somebody looks at a resume, you know how long people look at a resume for? A recruiter looks at a resume for? A business owner looks at a resume for? How long do you think they look at a resume for? 20? At the most. At the most, right? When you think about yourself, right? Most of us are online all day long. We look at a web page, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. We're constantly doing that. And it's the same thing with a recruiter, whether it's a resume in their hand or whether it's a LinkedIn profile. That's it. So that whole piece of putting Columbia on top of the resume just meant, as soon as they saw that, now they're going to read the rest of the resume. Okay? Every job that I ever got offered, or every interview I ever got offered, or every time someone sees my profile on LinkedIn and calls me up and says, "Are you interested in this job?" Right? Are you interested in coming into an interview for a job? Is simply because I've kept that philosophy on top of my mind. It has to be one piece of information that's right at the top over there that's going to get someone to read the rest of my profile, or going to get someone to give me a phone call. It sounds very simple, but it's very, very complicated. It sounds very, very simple, but it's pretty complicated. I've been giving these talks on finding jobs and how to find jobs and how to get recruiters to call you since about 2007, 2008, when the market was down. A lot of people lost their jobs. And at the time, because I was working in human resources, I was asked by a number of organizations. I've spoken for the OU. I've spoken for just a number of organizations all over on this topic. And for me, it makes me feel good. I remember one year I gave a speech. I think it was probably about around this time, February, March. And a few months later, I was in the supermarket, and a guy comes over to me. It was a week before Pesach, and he's so excited. I said, "What happened?" He said, "You remember I was at one of your talks?" I said, "Oh, okay, very nice." And he said, "I got a job." He said, "It was a few weeks before Pesach." He said, "I've been so tzibachim for so long now, I don't have a job." And I said, "So what was it? What did you do?" And he said, I followed what you told me to do." So what did I tell him to do? There are jobs out there. There are lots of jobs out there. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs out there. You guys, by the way, you should know, you're very fortunate because you have decided to go into a field where there are lots of jobs. Technology, software, that's where the jobs are these days. That's what jobs are these days. When people come and tell me, I can't get an interview, or I had so many interviews and I can't get the job, right? Or there's no jobs out there. I tell them that's not the case. I know for a fact. Why? Because I've hired, in the last 5-6 years, I've hired hundreds and hundreds of people. There's lots of jobs out there. The challenge that everyone has is, how do you make it easy to be found? How do you make it easy for that recruiter to find you and give you that job? That's the whole goal. You have to make it very, very easy for people to want to call you and come in and do that job. And that means that if you're going to have a resume out there, if you're going to have a LinkedIn profile out there, when somebody looks at it, and if they have a job that they're looking to hire for, they'll make that match very, very easily. So what I tell people, I've been telling people for years, is make it easy on recruiters. Make it easy for them. They have a hard job. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of millions of people in the world that they need to look through and try to find in order to hire. And they want to hire somebody. Sometimes people say, nobody wants to hire. It's not true. My recruiters, and me personally, I only got paid because we hired people. If we didn't hire people, I don't get paid. My recruiters got bonused. Every time I hired somebody, you get $300, $400. They want to hire people. But it's very hard to find people because people's resumes or LinkedIn profiles, whatever it is, are not making it easy to be found. They need to go through thousands. So the first thing I would tell you to do is make sure that your resume, make sure that if you have a LinkedIn profile, make sure whatever it is that you have out there that allows people to look at you and consider you for position, makes it very easy for them to decide whether or not you're the right person for a certain job. Does that make sense? Right? If you have a LinkedIn profile, it should be clear. Right? Here's what I do. Here's what I know how to do. Here's where I've worked. Here's my experience. Here are my degrees. It's laid out very, very easily, very, very clearly. When people call me, I have my own company. I don't apply for jobs anymore. When people call me and say, we're interested in hiring you for a certain position or a certain job, whatever it might be, I ask them, how'd you find me? LinkedIn. Keep it neat, keep it organized, make it easy on everybody. When you send a resume, it's the same thing. If you're sending a resume to somebody, right? Again, they're going to look at it for a few seconds. Make it very, very easy. I get resumes sometimes now from people, and right away I open it, I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. Right? It's a lot of information, it's a lot of words, it's not very well organized, it's very tiny font sometimes because they want to keep it on one page. You don't look at it, you don't read it, you don't really follow through on it. So it's very, very important, again, with a resume, that those things happen. The whole interview and job experience is all about making that match very easy, right? What happens internally at an organization is they say, we need to hire somebody. Okay. What does a person have to be able to do? C++, Java, Flash, sales, customer service, accounting, whatever it is. And they make a job description. And the job description says very, very clearly, here are all the things that this job needs to do. And then they look for resumes that match that job description. If this resume matches that job description, that person gets a phone call. That's how recruiting works. Now there's a little trick to it. If you want to get a certain job, let's say you see a certain position at a company, right? And it says, here's the job description. Here are the things that are required for the job. You can change your resume a little bit to make it match a little bit better, right? So even if you know, let's say for example, let's say you know 5 or 6 programming languages, but this one only requires 2, maybe I make it a little simpler. I don't want someone to get confused as to what I really want to do. I make it a little more focused. Let's say I've had different jobs. I've had customer service, I've had sales, I've had accounting. I make it a little bit easier because this job I'm applying for is only for sales. I don't want anyone to get confused. These are little tricks that I've used over the last 10 years to get calls back, to get phone calls, to get people to consider my resume. Make the resume match the job description. And then finally, when a person actually gets a phone call, so when you're lucky enough to get the phone call, the person says, hey, I want to interview you, I want to bring you in, I want to have a conversation. Same thing again. Got to make it easy on them. When I go in for a job interview or speak to somebody on the phone, I do research. I call people I know at the company. I call people who know this industry, the business, whatever it is, and I make sure that when I go in there, I'm an expert. So when they're looking at me and thinking, can this person come in and do this job well? They know I know what I'm talking about. I know this job. So I remember, just as an example, back to my DoubleClick days, I knew nothing about technology 10 years ago. I know very, very little now, but I knew nothing then. I got a phone call from this woman, Jennifer King her name was. She said, hi, I saw your resume on monster.com. That's when people used to use Monster to post their resumes to get found. I saw your resume on monster.com. I want to bring you in for an interview. I said, okay, what's the company? She said, DoubleClick. Have you ever heard of us? I said, I've never heard of you. Never heard of a company called DoubleClick. So she said, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you do some research? I'll call you back in an hour. Do some research on DoubleClick, call me back in an hour. She calls back in an hour. I couldn't figure out what they did. So I said, I'm not looking to embarrass myself. I don't want to come in for an interview. I said, I've interviewed at some other companies, had some other opportunities. I said, I'm not looking to embarrass myself. I said, I don't really want to come in. She said, no, come in. Pretend it's, she used the word widgets. Pretend it's widgets, we make widgets. So I said, she said, please, come in for the interview. I came in for the interview, and fortunately the first person I met knew almost as much as I did about technology. But she told me, everyone else you're going to meet though, she told me this, she said, everyone else you're going to meet is going to know a lot about what DoubleClick does. DoubleClick does advertising. So if you go on a website and you see ads on the side, or you see a video ad, or whatever it is, that's what DoubleClick does for a lot of companies. So when I went home that weekend, she told me, we're going to bring you back. She told me this. At the end of the first thing, she said, we're going to bring you back. I did so much research. I read, and I worked, and I called people, and I did whatever I could to find out about advertising and online advertising and technology and software. I researched programming languages. I researched everything. And when I came back in a week later, I met with all the various people. I was talking intelligent. I made it easy for them to see, this guy, Avi Singer, he could fit in over here. He could make it work over here, right? He knows what he's talking about. I pretended, and I did a good job pretending. I remember there was one woman who didn't want to hire me. I'd say I took a vote at the end. There was five or six people I met with, and 5 said yes, and 1 said no. How do I know she said no? Because later when I was working there, she told me she said no. So I said, why? She's actually a from woman. So I said, why do you vote no? She said, I knew you were a yeshiva guy who was just hacking. So I said, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Again, I'm just trying to say this is how people, especially again from our world, this is how people get, you get in the door and you get a job. I mean, one time I'm embarrassed to say these. I always wore yarmulke. I always wear yarmulke. Interview, never had a problem. Baruch Hashem, I always work for companies that are very, very, very friendly from people. Most companies I've worked with, we've had minyanim and kosher food, whatever it is. Most companies are like that. One time, I don't know if you're familiar with this company. One time somebody schlepped me into an interview at a company called MTV. MTV is a TV channel. Now, the only reason I went for the interview was the whole story was crazy. I don't even know why I was there. The only reason I went in for the interview was I wasn't going to work at MTV. I was going to work for CMT, which is the Country Music Network out in Nashville, Tennessee. And like Chaim says, when it's a big company, Viacom was the big company. When it's a big company, you go in for the interview. That's the rule. I was going to work on country music TV. I don't know. To this day, I still don't know what I was going to do. But anyway, the point is, when I went in even for that conversation, suddenly I became an expert at country music. I knew all the country music people. Why? Because again, I needed a job. I was looking for a job, and this was a job opportunity. You take every opportunity seriously. But the bottom line is that what I discovered at that time still sticks true until today. That if you make it easy for people to find you, and you make it easy for people to consider your skills, and you make it easy for people to hire you, then big companies out there, the Googles of the world, and the financial services companies of the world, and all the big technology companies in New York and in California, they want to hire you. They do. I know. Undertone, the company I used to work for, right now has 50, 60 open positions. Technology companies all across New York have hundreds, thousands of open positions. And they're non-discriminatory. They don't care if it's a from person or not a from person. They don't care if it's a Jewish person. They don't care. Right? They want somebody who's very well qualified. And that's our job. Our job is to make it easy for them to find us, make it easy to interview for us, and make it easy for them to hire us. That's what we want to do. I'm going to stop now for any questions. I have a few more things, but I'm going to stop now for any questions about that specifically. No, you don't have to shut off. I work for me. He works for Google. Yes, be careful what he says.
So you are a freelancer, I'm asking you?
No. I started a software company now. So I'll tell you a lot of the work. Yeah. Not a software for HR. So I used to train. One of the things that I was responsible for was training employees. I used to stand in front of a room like this and have 15, 20 people out there, and it was very inefficient. Technology is a much better way to train people. So I'm working on a platform now to create technology to help train employees much more efficiently. You were going to ask a question?
I just want to ask if, let's say, spreading a virus or hacking somewhere will bring you, like they will able to find you.
It doesn't necessarily, again, the goal is, that once they do find you, right? So what's the first person somebody does when they hear your name? Somebody brings a resume and says, Chaim Stein, I want to give you, what do they do? Google, right? What I discovered in 2005, 2006, even later, is that Google's your friend. If you have a LinkedIn profile, right? Unless you have a very common name, because then you'd just be somewhere in there. Avi Singer is not so common. If you search Avi Singer, I come up. Why? I have a LinkedIn profile, I have a lot of connections, it's very nice. If I was a software engineer, I'd have my portfolio there. What did I work on? What projects have I done? If I'm in marketing, I would have, again, these are the projects I've worked on. Those are the things I look at right away. What companies have you worked for, right? Those are the things that are important to a lot of these companies.
Actually, GitHub projects or a Stack Overflow profile.
If they can find you, I very early on, as Chaim was saying, I spoke at conferences. I wanted, again, make sure I could be found. I spoke at a lot of conferences. I forced my way in. I would call the conference and say, I want to come speak, until a few said fine. And I would go speak at these conferences, wherever they were, in Chicago and in California, wherever a conference was, I would go. And again, that helped a lot from building up my own reputation as somebody who knows human resources, who knows training, who knows all those things. And again, it makes it easier for people to find me. Chaim, you understand?
I'll just add that I had an engineer who needed to get some trust at Google. And when I told my boss that he was the number 3 responder on Stack Overflow, it changed everything.
Yeah.
Is better a resume with all of the technologies listed out, or better a small resume?
I'm sorry?
Is better a resume with all of the technologies listed out, or simple?
So if right now, if I had a resume in 10 years, just 10 years of working, if I had a resume, it would be 3-4 pages long. But I would never send out a resume that would be 3 or 4 pages long. I customize it for each company, for whatever I'm applying for. It's never the same resume, right?
You can't put that resume online.
That again, a LinkedIn profile you can have as much as you want in there. But I'm saying if somebody asks for a resume, and fewer companies are asking for resumes. If somebody asks me, please send me a resume.
Why?
What?
Why are few companies asking for resume?
Because LinkedIn is just becoming that. Right now, you can apply. If you apply for a lot of big companies, you can just apply with your LinkedIn profile, and they prefer it. It's easier. Nobody wants paper.
You'll try a resume.
Whatever it might be. But I'm saying, but I don't want a resume that makes it. Again, if the person has to sit there and dig through my resume to figure out am I the right guy, I'm already lost. Nobody's patience. I used to fight with my recruiters on this all the time. I would say, how long did you look at this resume for? 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. I would say, come on.
Is styling a good thing, like make bold headers and?
If it makes it easier, anything that makes it easier. I'll give you another example. Marketing people, right? When a marketing person sends me, someone says, I do marketing, I do design, I do logos, whatever it is. If a marketing person sends me a black and white resume, I throw it in the garbage. You're a marketing person. Where's the color? Where's the design, right? A marketing resume should be marketing, right? It's as simple, it's almost sometimes as simple as, I don't care what's written over there.
Shall a software engineer's resume be like a console?
Like a what? Oh, like a console. No, that some guys want to be a few years ago, people want to be creative, so they put on the resume, a QR code. So I could look up their resume online. You know what? Keep your QR code. Send me a resume. But, okay, so that
Find most job descriptions to be unrealistic.
are unrealistic?
Yeah.
They are.
They're just hoping to get something that's not there.
I want it 100%. And that's why, from a hiring standpoint, sometimes I'd have that with a manager. A manager would come and say, I need to hire somebody, I got approval for budget. Okay, now they make a job description. And the guy says everything. He's got 16 programming languages. And the latest one's got to know Ruby, and he's got to know this, PHP, everything, right?
And be easy to work with and have X amount of experience.
Exactly.
All the tasks.
So you know what I would tell them? I was very honest with them. I would say, listen, we're going to find this person, but it might take a few years, right? Again, it's the same thing with them. Their job description, I said, if you want to find somebody, make the job description a little bit easier. The same thing I tell people, job seekers. If you want to find a good job, maybe make a job a little simpler. Some people aren't comfortable with that because you're never sure. Sometimes people tell me, I don't know where I'm going to get a job, so I want to have as much out there on there. Again, that's a LinkedIn profile. It's different than a resume.
Someone told me you've seen HR requirements for a job description. It was 10 years experience of Node.js, and it's actually 3 years just in the market.
It's not, yeah. Again, managers will ask for the sun, the moon, and the stars, and they'll get very little. Let me go back to just a little more what I want to talk about. The application process. So if you're applying for a job, one, it always helps to apply through somebody that you know. It always helps to apply through somebody that you know. You see the job online, you might see it on a website, whatever it is. Try to find somebody who can put that resume in front of them. Why? Because, again, there's so many resumes that are coming into HR these days. I put a job up. I was helping somebody out. I put a job up 2 weeks ago on a job board.
On LinkedIn?
No, on Indeed. Indeed.com is a job board. I put it up there. And within 2 hours, I had 60 resumes already. It wasn't that. It was more of a business job. I had 60 resumes already. So it's, it can gather up really quickly. Now, the nice thing about some of the technology now is you can match up keywords. I can see which resume has the right thing. I can knock out a bunch of them right away, right? But so the difference, then I happen to have sent that same job description to some people that I know that do headhunting and recruiting. When they put a resume in front of me, I actually read it. So the difference between applying on a website and being one of 60 jobs or 100 jobs or 300 jobs, I bet that for every Google job there's 1,000 applicants. It's my guess. It's my guess, right? So
You worked at Google, you should have data.
Huh?
You can't just guess.
I haven't been there. I haven't been there a number of years, but Chaim, it's probably something along
The
the.
published number years ago.
What? There was a published. That was the published number of years ago. That's what I thought I got this
I
number.
think it was like for every 100 reviews was a hire or something.
Yeah, it's throwing. It's a needle in a haystack, like they
Let's
say.
say if I put in a bold, I don't believe you will read this through.
Somebody might laugh about it, but it's not.
Somebody might find it cheesy, somebody might find it.
But my point is that if you get somebody to actually submit it on that person's behalf, on your behalf, meaning somebody who might know somebody, again, it's much better. Not only that, when I worked my last job when I ran human resources at Undertone, we like when somebody at the company submits a referral. We used to pay $5,000 for every employee who made a referral who got hired and stayed for 90 days. Because we like that so much more than just getting resumes online, whatever it is. Bring me a friend who you know already, who you know if he can do the job or not, because you know what the job is about. You know the company, you know if he matches the culture. And I brought in a number of people, at different companies, again, through that process. Companies like that. We don't always know somebody. Again, it's the value of something like LinkedIn, the value of social networks, the value of meetups, is you meet more people. And if you apply for a job, I don't think I'd ever apply for a job online these days. Like if I were looking for a job right now, I don't think I'd apply on a website. I would wait until I found, I know somebody working at the company, I know somebody who knows somebody, whatever it is, I apply that way. I get it through that way. Yeah.
Interesting question. Maybe it's a question for Chaim, but which type of technology is the highest ranking now?
In what?
In salary.
In salary-wise?
Yeah, front end, back end, which language?
I don't think there's one specific one. First of all, like this. First of all, it's like any other business. It's supply and demand, right? There are times when DBAs are in high demand, and right now, if they know some of the newer things like MongoDB or something like that, right, they might be in even higher demand. It's really like that. It's really supply and demand. Right now, or even for a couple of years, I would say, people who knew HTML5, things like that, you can outsource a lot of those right now. So it fluctuates. It really does. But even more important is expertise, right?
Actually, a question now about outsourcing. Is the technology momentum going to stop because people are outsourcing? No, because I think outsourcing is going to always be like kind of a one-to-one relationship, right? Outsourcing is fantastic. We use for my platform, we use a lot of outsourcing. But outsourcing is useless, and I've learned this mistake. I've been with companies who learned this mistake, wasting millions and millions and millions of dollars on this. It's a one-to-one. One engineer has to keep his eye on one engineer who's being outsourced. So he works 10 hours a day. Maybe he sends it over to Kiev or wherever the person is, and that person could do some work. But if he doesn't let go over his work every single day and keep him in line, this guy, for $16 an hour, he's not, So you don't think it's going to be like...
So then what are you getting by outsourcing?
I'm sorry?
What are you getting by outsourcing?
2 for 1.
Oh, so both
Two.
of them.
I worked for a company. Well, one company I worked for that did this very well. I'm sorry, I have to leave in a few minutes. Just want to get the interview process.
The engineer that's involved with that can't do his work either.
No, he could. He's just monitoring it. It's very easy to do these days.
The one that you need
I worked for a company. I figured out outsourcing in early 2000, and used to create code for clients. So they actually wrote code for clients, and would have it QA'd overnight. So the client actually thought that the company itself, within 10 hours, was writing the code and doing QA within 10, 12 hours. The truth of the matter is someone else is doing it. So you always have a 24-hour cycle when you're outsourcing. If you have the relationship, the setup is right. Let me get to the last part, which is the interview process. Interviews matter a tremendous amount. It matters how you present yourself. It matters how you conduct yourself. It matters how you speak. It matters how you talk to people. I remember a very embarrassing incident when I first got to DoubleClick in 2006. So I got myself a corporate job, and everyone told me in yeshiva, now you have to have last of clients will get jobs at your company. So I reached out to some of the organizations that found they're helping people get jobs, and I said, listen, we're running a job fair, whatever it was at the company. You can send some people. After that experience, I didn't do that again for 5 or 6 years. Why? They showed up, and they were very and they weren't dressed properly, and they didn't have a clean shirt, or whatever it was. And and one guy, I remember one guy came over, and I said, oh, how you doing? I said, let me help you. Where's your resume? He goes, resume? I said, it's like a job fair over here, but it's internal in the company. You can the hiring manager can hire you today. He goes, oh, I don't need a resume. Give me a computer, I'll show you what I can do. I said, really? I said, so after that experience, I realized I got to have this part of the conversation also. Appearance matters. A person comes and even from a Kiddush Hashem standpoint, a person comes, they should look put together. You come on time. You have an extra resume with you. You have all that stuff that a person can speak intelligently, right? Again, if you want to work at a corporate America, English is the language, right? So to be able to speak English well, and it takes practice. It takes practice, and to be able to speak and to be able to answer questions and be able to do examples and that's a lot of work. But that's difference very often between getting a job and not getting a job.
A lot of ethnic groups that speak English worse than us.
Oh, for sure. Again, yes and no. It definitely is. And I'll say this from an HR standpoint because I don't work for any company right now.
But they charge $10 an hour.
It's not right.
You gotta dig in Google.
No, you need to know Spanish or English or Spanish. I want to end this quickly. The answer is, you're right. People speak English very poorly. We have Chinese people,
Chinese, Indians, Pakistanis,
and from all types of places who don't speak, who are hard to understand sometimes. But what Avi's referring to is not somebody who just, what he's talking about is not somebody who just can't speak, that you can't understand. But the question is, do you try? Do you try to present your communication well? As an example, I work with a very senior software engineer who's Chinese. When I speak to him, I don't understand a word he's saying. But Hashem, there are some other engineers on my team who do understand him a little bit better. But when he writes an email, he's extremely well. He communicates extremely well. So you don't always have to have everything together. You have to have some means of communicating. A person doesn't speak well. He doesn't speak well in public. Not everybody speaks up in public. Sometimes I have engineers who are senior people. They wrote a design doc, and I want them to present it. They're not the best guy to present it. So they write their comments on the side of the document. They use the comments in Google Docs. That's how they present. But you have to be able to communicate. Figure out a way. What is your mode of communication? Is it verbally? Is it written? You have to be able to communicate.
You're 100% right. What I'm saying is that don't think that for that guy, for a person comes in from another ethnicity or another background and doesn't speak English that well, don't think it's not a red flag or a potential knock. Now again, sometimes what they'll do is, and it's a smart strategy, is if you feel like you're not so eloquent in English in person, they'll write a phenomenal follow-up email, right? That shows that maybe in verbal communication, when I'm interacting with somebody, my English isn't so perfect, but look how well I can write an email. These are things that have a very big impact. So what I'm saying is the interview process itself has a tremendous impact, has a tremendous ability to get somebody a job or not get somebody a job. I mean, it's the difference between when people get a job. And again, I've interviewed at the strangest places that you would never think, like I said, MTV, Blue Man Group. I don't know if anyone familiar with that, with Blue Man Group. It's a Broadway show, right? Again, from guy in the yarmulke. They called me up. We want to interview you. I went for the interview. I got the job. I worked there for a few months. Wasn't the right place, but all that, and nothing from me. I'm again yeshiva background. You go to college, you have a degree, whatever it is. But it doesn't have to necessarily be the degree. It's how you present yourself. It's how you have a conversation. When they call you on the phone for that initial phone screen, hey, we got your resume. Somebody gave us your resume. Can we talk for a few minutes? Absolutely. Right? Those interactions are literally what get people, the difference between people that get the job and don't get the job. They're bringing 10 people in. What's the difference between these 10 people? Sometimes they all have the same coding ability. Sometimes they all have the same experience. Sometimes they can all answer the same questions. It's that conversation. It's, do I want to work with this person? That's how you got to do it, right? Do I want to work with this person?
First impression. In the Google template for giving feedback on engineers, one of the sections, there's only 5 sections, one of them is communication.
That's communication skills and how you communicate with people,
Right.
not actual written prose or...
You're absolutely right. So you find any way you can communicate.
So, the bottom line I want to leave with you today, and I apologize, I have to leave in a few minutes. I've carpool back in Far Rockaway. But a couple of things. One, like I said, go out there. If you're interested in finding jobs at these big companies, go out there. Make sure you can be found. If you want help on your LinkedIn profile, feel free to email me. Right? I did a similar conversation like this a few months ago at PCS in Lakewood. For many of the accounting students, they have MBA students over there. Baruch Hashem, they've also now started to think about software engineering, which is very smart. Right? You have literally, hundreds and if not thousands of colleagues out in Lakewood who could be software engineers, the same way they could be an accountant or an MBA. So I spoke to them, and afterwards I got a lot of emails. People said, "Can you look at my LinkedIn profile? Can you look at my resume?" And I'm always happy to do that because that's one very, very good way of people finding jobs is simply that. So if you want, email me. My email is Avi Singer OD. It might be an OD.
How many times?
Huh?
How many?
Very good. Avi Singer at Gmail. I'll look at your LinkedIn profile if you want. I'll look at your resume if you want. If you have questions about certain companies, if you have questions about interviews that you might have, whatever it is, always feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to get on the phone, have a conversation, respond through email back and forth. But like I said, Baruch Hashem, there's a big market out there for you guys. If that's something interesting, I think is a big opportunity. Shkaya.